Hey guys, and welcome to part 3 of my Reboot Retrospective. If you haven't yet, I would recommend checking out parts 1 and 2 first. Sounds good? Alright, let's get started. The year was 1997, and despite having been cancelled during its second season, Reboot was now more popular than ever, having reached a larger audience through syndication than it had previously been able to on the ABC network.
I get the impression that not only children, but their parents love it too.
This, coupled with the fact that Mainframe Entertainment was now something of a rock star in the Saturday morning cartoon scene with their second television venture, Beast Wars, being the #1 rated show in its time slot, gave the young Canadian production company enough money and clout to revive Reboot on their own terms. Initially, this revival was planned as a film to be called Terabyte Rising, but that plan was eschewed in favor of a third season to be aired once again on YTV. Yes, Reboot was back, though only in Canada and initially in the UK. American audiences would need to wait almost 2 years to catch Season 3 before the show was picked up by Cartoon Network in the United States. With ABC out of the picture, Reboot was no longer beholden to any of the bizarre censorship limitations that had held the show back initially. This resulted in a few aesthetic changes. The show took on a darker tone, Dot was now allowed to have 2 breasts instead of 1, violence, both implied and explicit, was ramped up considerably, Hexadecimal was into BDSM now, and it was just a fun time all around, really.
I think she likes being tied up.
Let us not even think about that.
For kids.
Advancements in Mainframe Entertainment's animation technology made during the show's year of cancellation also allowed for Reboot Season 3 to have much better visuals than the previous 2. In the show's third season, lighting and shadows are now dynamic and used effectively to enhance the mood of a scene, while the inclusion of superior motion blur, explosion, powder burn effects, and the like made for more exciting action. Character models are also dramatically improved. The humanoid characters now have eyelashes and no longer need seams in their models to be obfuscated using clunky shoulder pads. Walking and running cycles also generally look much more natural, with only a few small exceptions. In fact, all movement just looks a little more smooth and polished than it did in past seasons. Additionally, there's a much broader spectrum of textures and fine detailing used on the rendered objects. That is to say, all the objects. I mean, just take a look at some of these high-resolution promotional images compared to their equivalent screenshots from the television show. These aren't new images either. Mainframe Entertainment actually had the capability to render the show in HD back in 1997, though their computers lacked the processing power to do it in a reasonable amount of time. Each of these stills took between 45 and 90 minutes to render, and besides, no television station at the time would have been able to broadcast a show in HD anyway, so it would have been a waste of time and money to render the show like that. For those of you watching who may think it would be much faster and easier nowadays to re-render the show in HD using current technology for, say, a Blu-ray release, you would be correct. However, rumor has it that the original working files for Reboot's episodes were disposed of some years ago, so unfortunately that's not likely to ever happen. I would absolutely love to be proven wrong though. Ball's in your court, Rainmaker. The biggest change, however, and in my opinion the most noticeable, was the much improved story. With a now dedicated fan base in tow, Reboot's creative team made the wise decision to age up many aspects of the show, both figuratively and literally. The target audience was shifted from young children to kids aged 12 and up, as the show began to delve more into mature themes and emotionally complex characters that could be explored throughout a cohesive, season-long story arc. This story was divided up into 4 mini-story arcs to keep the plot well-paced and the characters and settings dynamic throughout the season.
So each episode was a story, each 4-episode arc was a story, and the whole season had a story.
Season 3 begins in the immediate aftermath of Season 2's finale. Bob is gone, Enzo is a Guardian cadet, and the bulk of Mainframe's defense forces have been either taken out by the web invasion or destroyed by Megabyte, who has a giant hexadecimal-powered laser pointed directly at the principal office. This first arc sees Dot, Enzo, Mouse, Andrea, Frisket, and Fong defending Mainframe from Megabyte, not only physically, but also against a targeted propaganda campaign designed to turn the citizens of Mainframe against their inexperienced new Guardian.
I now understand what propaganda is.
For kids.
Enzo does eventually manage to get most of the city on his side, and our heroes even manage to trap Megabyte within his sector using a literal firewall. But it's here, just when things are beginning to look up, that Enzo, Andrea, and Frisket lose a game, forcing them to enter Game Sprite mode so they can leave with the game rather than be nullified.
Game over.
Here it goes. Get ready.
The user wins.
Enzo. No. No!
From here, we jump to an indeterminate point in the future where it's revealed that Enzo and Andrea have spent the remainder of their youth hopping from system to system through games in an effort to return home to Mainframe. This next set of episodes serves primarily as a reintroduction to Enzo.
Matrix. Call me Matrix.
As they do their best to help out the residents of the systems they find themselves in after each game leaves. The trio eventually ends up in a system with ports they can theoretically use to travel directly to Mainframe over the net, but this turns out not to be possible when we learn that during Matrix and Andrea's game hopping, the Guardian Collective has fallen under the influence of a virus called Damon and has restricted access to the net. It's here that we finally meet back up with the software pirate Captain Capacitor, who had previously been a guest star on the Season 1 episode, The Crimson Binome. The third arc involves the gang teaming up with Capacitor and his crew as they continue on their quest to return to Mainframe, now as wanted fugitives on the run from the Guardians. Since access to the net has been restricted, they travel the uncharted seas of the web with the help of a new friend, web surfer Ray Tracer. The web is beset with dangers, among them the mysterious web riders who, as it turns out, have become companions of Bob.
You just can't talk in these things. Whoa! I think you're a little too big for that.
Reunited at last, in the last arc of Season 3, Matrix, Bob, and their companions join up and make their way back to Mainframe, only to discover that in their absence, the city has been conquered by Megabyte, who's now taken over the principal office, trapped Fong's decapitated head in a jar.
The kid.
What do you heads do all day?
We share our wisdom with those who seek it.
And forced Dot and her resistance fighters underground. Mainframe is on the brink of destruction, and even after Megabyte is finally defeated and banished to the web, the city begins to collapse around them in a system crash. The solution? Just let it. Bob suggests gambling that the user, the unseen operator of the computer that is Mainframe, will choose to restart the system after it crashes, saving them all. This works and the day is saved, but some scars never fully heal, and at least a few of the characters have changed for good, although this concept would mostly be explored in Season 4. Season 3 of ReBoot tackles subject matter such as loss, death, personal growth, and rebirth. We see each of our core heroes experience tremendous loss, but also grow and gain something new in the process. Enzo, for the first time in his life, gains a purpose and some big responsibilities, but at the loss of his best friend and mentor, Bob. He loses his eye and his home, but then gains the strength needed to defeat the enemies he wasn't able to before. Meanwhile, Dot is afraid of losing Enzo after having already lost Bob, loses him anyway, but gains both back in the end. Bob loses his old companion, Glitch, but gains the ability to return he and his friends to Mainframe. Then, everybody loses Mainframe itself, only to gain a new one in the end. Dot has survivor's guilt, Enzo loses his innocence, Bob is literally a different person now, I could go on. The show hits this note on a meta level as well. We lose Bob as a main character, but we also gain a much better main character in Enzo Matrix. As I said in my Season 2 video, Bob was always the guy that everyone else could count on to save the day in a pinch. Remaining characters miss his comforting presence, and so does the viewer. Even Megabyte's henchmen, Hack and Slash, lament his absence.
I miss Bob. Bob always stopped us before we could do anything really bad. Now nobody does.
Hey! I never thought of it like that before.
The fact that he's now gone, coupled with the rest of our heroes being on the back foot for most of the season, serves to give the show some real stakes in a way that it never really had before. If Bob, the hero, can be defeated by Megabyte, then anybody can.
I think as a storyteller, you just want to get your teeth into it a little more and tell bigger, grander stories with consequences and things that reach beyond the realm of that Saturday morning show.
Speaking of which, easily the most fascinating aspect of the story this time around is the way it develops Enzo as a character. I've mostly avoided talking about Enzo in previous videos because, to be honest, there really wasn't much to his character in ReBoot's first 2 seasons. This is likely because the creators of ReBoot never actually intended to include a child character in the series and had to be talked into it.
The last thing Ian, Phil, and myself wanted in the show was a kid. Because all Saturday morning shows had kids in them and they were really annoying and they got in the way. Chris Bruff said, you have to have a kid in the show because you need somebody for the audience to relate to. And he actually said, and I quote, you've got to have a little Enzo running around in there. Now, I don't know where he plucked the name Enzo from, but it stuck.
Most of Enzo's character up until now had consisted of his wanting to be more than he was, wanting more responsibility.
I understand you have a new delivery service.
Wanting to help out Bob, and wanting to be a guardian.
Can I help Bob, huh?
This'll be cool!
In Season 3, with Bob gone, Enzo steps up and attempts to fill the shoes left by his friend as Mainframe's defender. Each episode sees him enter a game, only to find that being the hero isn't as easy as Bob always made it look. Throughout these episodes, Enzo often teams up with detractors, who are skeptical of him due to his inexperience, comparing him negatively to Bob. This gradually eats away at his confidence, culminating in this confrontation with Megabyte.
You are what you have always been, a mere delivery boy. Do not provoke me further. It is by my will alone you survive this encounter.
Enzo's self-deprecation deepens after he loses the game that gets himself, Andrea, and Frisket lost on the net. He grows jaded, angry, and resentful from his time in the games, and the hopelessness of their quest to return home gets the better of him. Continuous failure and a perceived lack of agency in his own destiny
We're not in control here.
causes Enzo's inferiority complex to manifest itself as a contempt for everything associated with his former identity. He hates being called a guardian, even though he still technically is one, and even rejects his given name.
I've told you not to call me Enzo.
He's also clearly got at least some degree of PTSD from his time spent in the games.
I didn't mean to. I just reacted. I couldn't stop myself.
Deep down, though, Matrix is still the same boy he always was, even to the point of being ashamed of the man he's become.
I've changed. What if he doesn't like what I've become? Well, he is my hero.
The best view we get into what makes Matrix tick is in Season 3's 7th episode called Number 7, where a bonk on the head from a golf ball puts Matrix through an intricate dream.
But you hate me. You must. Look at what you've become.
You're wrong!
Matrix concludes his season-long story arc upon his return to Mainframe, where he quite literally conquers his demons, both in the form of the same user who beat him in that game so long ago, as well as Megabyte, the memory of whom has haunted him since childhood.
You took away my life. Destroyed my home. Caused nothing but pain and suffering to everyone I held dear.
Why did it have to be like this, Megabyte? Whatever happened to the virus who gave me that guitar for my birthday?
The Enzo character is even symbolically given a second chance at his missed childhood. At the end of Season 3's final episode, once Mainframe has been restored, because Matrix's icon was still in game sprite mode, the system, believing him to be deleted, makes a copy of him along with all the other deleted binomes, resulting in a new little Enzo being born. Remember, ReBoot is a kids show.
For kids.
Enzo started out his existence as the plucky kid character meant to be a self-insert for ReBoot's predominantly young audience, but has pretty much been turned into Bruce Wayne a quarter of the way through Season 3.
I had to become bigger, tougher. I had to be ready for Megabyte to survive the games.
This was an extremely ballsy direction for the show to go in, but one that I think paid off immensely as we ended up getting a really solid character out of it with a ton of emotional depth. The only moment with Enzo Matrix this season that I didn't really care for is right here when he first meets Ray Tracer.
Hey, wait! How about me? These Guardian bootlickers want me deleted too.
You're no use to me.
What, he's completely willing to just let this guy die even though freeing him costs absolutely nothing? Gee, careful you don't cut yourself on that razor-sharp edge, Matrix. Now, I understand why this scene was written this way. They're still establishing Matrix as the steely-eyed badass who's had his morals compromised by time in the games, but in every previous episode with Matrix up till this point, his first reaction has been to help strangers who are in need of it, not callously dismiss them. Sure, he quickly loses patience with and threatens anybody antagonistic towards him, but Ray hasn't done anything here except ask for help, and while the show would soon establish Ray as a foil to Matrix, trying to compete for Andrea's affections, Ray and Andrea haven't even met yet in this scene. It's a minor complaint, and it doesn't really matter in the long run, but it stood out to me as a little weird, so I thought I'd bring it up. It may seem like I've been painting ReBoot Season 3 as a dark, depressing follow-up to what had come before, and while it certainly does have some dark subject matter and story beats, this is offset by the continued use of comedic elements and pop culture references even more prevalent here than they were previously.
The line must be drawn here!
The line must be drawn here!
As with Season 2, we get several game sequences dedicated to riffing on other franchises, such as The Evil Dead, featuring a user version of Ash Williams,
Groovy.
as well as, hilariously, Enzo rebooted as Michael Jackson from Thriller, and Dot rebooted as Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Do you know, Bill?
No.
How about the Bob?
who herself was a parody of Morticia Addams from the Addams Family, a riff on the theme song to whom plays in the background. There's also a Toy Story / James Bond mashup game, complete with a Bond-style intro sequence that seems to be specifically parodying GoldenEye. Then there's a Looney Tunes game, a Mortal Kombat game, a Mars Attacks game, and a Sword and Sandals style game where Matrix reboots into what seems to be a cross between Conan the Barbarian and William Wallace from Braveheart. That episode, by the way, was written by Chrissy Marks, the lead writer of the cartoon series Conan the Adventurer. Additionally, there's an entire episode mashing up Star Trek and the Super Friends, written by DC Fontana, best known for her work writing on Star Trek.
I am Captain Robert Cursor, leader of the Hero Selective.
Captain, I calculate that in 3.6 nanoseconds...
There's another episode paying homage to the Tatooine segments from Star Wars and the Man with No Name film series. ReBoot co-creator Gavin Blair even compares Paul Dobson's portrayal of Matrix to Clint Eastwood.
He was like the classic Clint Eastwood, but down a few octaves, kind of deep. I'm Matrix.
There's no Guardian here.
And finally, there's also an episode devoted entirely to parodying the short-lived 1967 television series The Prisoner. Those are just the big ones, but trust me when I say that throughout ReBoot Season 3, there are so many little references to be found that trying to go through all of them would probably be an hour-long video in and of itself.
I don't believe in the no-win scenario.
I don't believe in the no-win scenario.
System out of danger?
Ship out of danger.
ReBoot's third season concludes in one of the best sequences of the entire show, which serves as a great ending to a great season of television. Not just children's television, but television in general. The events of the show from the end of Season 2 through to the end of Season 3 are summarized and acted out over the course of a few minutes in an operatic musical number performed by binomes dressed as the main characters, while the actual main characters sit in the audience to watch. This performance is capped off by a literal picture-perfect ending, showing that despite all the adversity, Mainframe did in fact get a happy ending. The absolute perfection that is this ending sequence is part of what makes the ending of ReBoot's fourth season so much more frustrating. But that's a topic for another video. Before I get to that though, next time we're going to be jumping back over to Beast Wars, where that show is also about to get a sharp increase in quality. So stay tuned, folks. Drop a comment down below letting me know what you thought of ReBoot Season 3. If you liked the video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you would hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and share this video with anyone else who you think might enjoy it. You guys are the best, and the support you've been showing for this series really is humbling. I'd like to give a big thanks to Glitch Bob from RebootRevival.com, who has been very helpful towards the making of this video. He is far and away the biggest ReBoot fan I've ever met, and a great wealth of information on the series. So if you're a ReBoot fan, go check him out. Links down in the description. And another big thanks to you for watching. Thanks very much once again, and take care.